In the early hours of the 13th of June 2023, this man stepped out of an alleyway in Nottingham, England, and brutally murdered 2 young students. In the rampage that followed, he would leave another person dead and 3 more injured before he was finally stopped by police. In the wake of this horrifying and senseless violence, the legal fallout captivated the nation as questions of culpability, how and why this happened began to implicate the system as a whole. This is the story of the 2023 Nottingham attacks. Welcome to the worst of us.
As the city of Nottingham tries to make sense of today's events,
I just heard siren after siren after.
31-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of murder.
Stabbed 2 students to death.
True justice has not been served today.
People in charge have got blood on their hands.
But planning, he knew what he was doing.
somebody who himself has said he knew what he was doing.
There's relatively consistent evidence that he knew what he was doing.
His culpability was not extinguished by his mental impairment. He knew what he was doing.
On the 4th of September 1991, Valdo Calocane was born in Guinea-Bissau in West Africa. His family would move throughout his childhood, living in Madeira and Lisbon before settling in the United Kingdom in 2007. Former classmates of the Sir Thomas Picton School that Valdo attended in Pembrokeshire, Wales, would describe him as an intelligent young man with a keen appetite for football and science. The family were described as high achievers, with Calocane's mother being an intensive care nurse and his brother studying at the prestigious University of Cambridge. After moving out of Wales to pursue his education, Calocane would enroll at Nottingham University to study mechanical engineering, graduating in June of 2022. The first sign of Valdo Calocane's mental health issues came to light on the 23rd of May 2020 when he visited a hospital believing he was having a heart attack. He was discharged 13 hours later and upon returning home, tried to knock down a door to a neighboring apartment, believing that his mother was being raped inside. Calocane was arrested for criminal damage and told police that he hadn't slept for 5 days and was hearing voices. He was assessed and it was concluded that he was psychotic and suffering from paranoid delusions but was low risk to others, so he was released without charge. Calocane would return home and immediately knock down the door to another apartment. The photo you are seeing is the flat he tried to break into, visited by the BBC during their Panorama documentary on the case. Calocane scared the resident to the point that she feared for her life and jumped out of the window to escape him, fracturing her lower spine. 1 hour after being deemed low risk and discharged, Calocane was again arrested for criminal damage. He was admitted to the hospital on the 25th of May, where he was treated with antipsychotic medication for 30 days before being discharged on June 17th, told to continue taking medication and placed into the care of a mental health crisis team in his community. Calocane's family would later reveal to the BBC that they had requested Valdo was kept in the hospital after the first break-in, before anybody got hurt, but they were ignored and he was discharged anyway. It is also worth noting here that it was only after the second break-in, after a woman had fractured her spine, that Calocane was admitted to the hospital, and he faced no legal punishment for this incident once he was released. This would, unfortunately, be the first instance of a recurring pattern in this story, where the opportunity for prevention is missed and action is taken only after the damage has already been done. Just a month later, on July 14th, Calocane was readmitted to the hospital as he had stopped taking his medication and tried to force his way into another apartment. He was admitted under Section 3 of the Mental Health Act, which allowed him to be detained for up to 6 months if necessary. Parts of Calocane's medical records would later be made public, including these now chilling notes of an assessment by a doctor during this period. Doctor observed that there seems to be no insight or remorse, and that the danger is that this will happen again, and, perhaps, Valdo will end up killing someone. After this observation was made, although he could have been detained for up to 6 months, Calocane was released after only 2 weeks in care. He received a diagnosis of paranoid schizophrenia, his medication was increased, and he was returned to the care of his mental health team. His family would later reveal that they were not informed of his diagnosis, believing he was suffering from isolated episodes of psychosis rather than a long-term condition. In autumn of 2020, Calocane admitted to his mental health team that he had lied to doctors about no longer hearing voices in July because he was tired of being in the hospital, saying that he still heard the voices and that they talk about each other to him, suggesting he prove his power. He insisted that he wasn't mentally ill, believing the voices were real intelligence agents and police officers. He was prescribed a higher dose of medication, but no other action was taken. The next year, in May of 2021, Calocane appeared at MI5 headquarters in London, asking to be arrested and for them to stop controlling him. It is not obvious that anything was done in response to this, and at a home visit on the 10th of August, medical staff would not report anything about him hearing voices. It is now understood that he was actively concealing his symptoms during this period. On the 31st of August, Calocane admitted to his team that he had stopped taking medication and had no intention of continuing his treatment, again insisting that he wasn't mentally unwell, but was the victim of a conspiracy by the mental health services to monitor him. Medical notes from the time read as follows. Valdo went into a lengthy rant about why he was no longer taking medication, because he wasn't psychotic and never has been. Valdo presented with a complex delusional system in which he believes that we've created technology to cause his voice experiences and monitor him. On the 3rd of September, Calocane's apartment was searched to assess his mental state, and a bag of unused medication, dated February 2021, was found in his flat. He assaulted a police officer during the search and was again admitted to the hospital, spending almost 4 weeks there before being transferred to the privately run hospital, Priory Arnold, on the 1st of October to continue his care. Calocane is reported to have spent much of his time at Priory Arnold alone in his room, and this nurse would later describe to the BBC how the hospital was understaffed during this period, and Calocane likely needed much more treatment than he was given.
When you got on the wards, that's when the reality started to hit, that you started to say, it's not rightly staffed sometimes and people are not turning up, and you had a lot of incidents, like sometimes 3 incidents in one ward, and you're trying to spread yourself thin to try to deal with all the incidents that can be quite serious. Every time a patient deteriorates, it takes longer for you to get them where they were, or as close as you can to where they were. You're talking of a stay with somebody from 3 months to 6 months minimum.
So with someone like Valdo Calocane, it could take up to 6 months from the point they arrive to them being discharged.
It could. It depends how long they've been without the medication and how acutely unwell they are.
Calocane could have been held for up to 6 months, but was reviewed and discharged after less than 3 weeks. A note on his medical records dated October 2021 reads, "No psychotic features noted, nor risks to self or others noted." Following the attacks, the Priory group would describe Calocane's treatment and discharge as appropriate. After his release, Calocane had limited contact with his community team, appearing confrontational and missing appointments, and by January of 2022, he had missed 5 in a row, with medical records showing that his team were considering discharging him in this period. On the 18th of January, Calocane was involved in an altercation with a roommate in their shared student accommodation. The student would later describe this incident to the BBC.
Before I know it, he's throwing a punch. I've sort of like dodged the punch, and then we're wrestling around. And I said to someone, film this because we need evidence that this has happened.
Hey, come on, bring the police, man. Hey, Valdo, come on now.
You know, he's a big guy. I'm in a headlock and just trying to get him off me, really. Eventually he let go, and we called the police, and he says, "No, you're not leaving. You're staying here with me."
Come on, man, this is stressful, bro. Like, just let me go.
And the whole time he just looked at me like this. The whole time just staring into me.
Valdo, bro, like, you just go. You just leave, man. I'll stay here.
I was very distressed by the time the police got there.
How did you feel about Valdo Calocane?
I thought he was someone with serious mental health issues. So I didn't think he was a bad person necessarily. I thought he was an ill person. But I definitely did not think that he should have been walking around on the street I didn't think that was what was best for him.
The police were called, but they did not arrest Calocane. He was assessed, and it was concluded that he did not need to be hospitalized but could continue to be treated in the community. 9 days later, after another assessment of his apartment, Calocane was again admitted to the hospital. This would later be identified as incorrect procedure, as he was admitted under a section of the Mental Health Act that only allows the hospital to detain someone for up to 28 days, usually being used when the person is not already known to mental health services. While in the hospital, his community mental health nurse would tell doctors that he had repeatedly missed appointments and not taken medication, suggesting that long-lasting injectable medication would benefit him in the long term. This suggestion was ignored, and he was discharged with no change in his care. This would later be identified as yet another missed opportunity to prevent the tragedy that would, eventually, occur in Nottingham. By April of 2022, records show Calocane's care had been transferred from his long-standing team to 2 nurses, and efforts to engage him or his family had reduced notably. He continued to collect his medication until mid-July, reportedly looking unkempt and suspicious during these sporadic visits. After he stopped appearing to collect his medication, his address was visited, and a resident said that nobody called Valdo Calocane lived there, with medical records showing that another home visit was planned after this incident, but it never took place. On the 23rd of September, 2022, Calocane's mental health team discharged him as they had lost contact with him completely. This was essentially them giving up on his care, and his family would later describe how mental health services washed their hands of him and that he distanced himself from them after this, falsely telling them he had moved away. The 23rd of September was also the day he was due to appear in court for his assault of the police officer the year before, but he didn't show up and a warrant was issued for his arrest. This warrant would still be outstanding 9 months later, at the time of the 2023 Nottingham attacks. It is worth noting that at this point in September of 2022, mental health services choose to discharge a volatile patient known to refuse medication who has already harmed multiple people due to his condition. There is no evidence that doctors, police, his family, or university were consulted in this decision. And there is no record of his movements for the next 8 months. On the 1st of May 2023, Calocane started working in a warehouse in Kegworth, Leicestershire. 4 days later, he attacked 2 employees, and the police were called but never arrested him in connection to this incident or the active warrant for his arrest at this time. In June of 2024, 3 Leicestershire police officers would face investigations for misconduct over their inquiries into these assaults, and these investigations are still active at the time of writing. However, the fact that Calocane was not arrested in May of 2023 meant he slipped through the cracks of the system once again and was walking the streets as a free man a month later. And the consequences of that would be even more horrific than anybody could have imagined. In London, at 7 p.m. on June 12, 2023, Valdo Calocane inserted a new SIM card into his mobile phone and called his brother Elias, saying the following: "This is the last time I will talk to you. After this, I will leave you alone. Disassociate yourself from me. If anything happens, don't come and see me in hospital. This is not mental illness, I am fine. I'm not ill, but there is two-way communication and 24/7 voices in my head. They are intelligent people and they are making threats. I will send you the files I sent to Mum at Christmas. I know what is happening is real." Calocane traveled from London to Nottingham by train that evening, arriving around 11:30 p.m. CCTV footage shows him leaving the station, carrying a rucksack filled with knives and a metal scaffolding pole. At 3:03 a.m., Calocane turned off his mobile phone and walked towards the area of Ilkeston Road, where he hid in an alleyway. A little before 4 a.m., Barnaby Webber and Grace O'Malley Kumar, two 19-year-old students, were walking home along Ilkeston Road following an end-of-term night out in the city center. They were almost home when Calocane emerged from his hiding place and attacked them. Calocane attacked Barnaby first, who was gravely injured and fell to the ground. Grace would try to intervene, pushing Calocane away and into the road, but he would then turn his attention to her, and she too would fall after a short struggle. It would later be remarked that Grace could have run to safety as Calocane attacked her friend, but that wasn't the type of person she was. Calocane then returned to Barnaby, attacking him again as he lay on the ground. Footage showed that despite having been attacked, Grace would still try to help her friend in this moment but collapsed due to the severity of her injuries. Calocane then walked calmly away, leaving the two students on the ground. Neighbors would alert the police to the attack, with this harrowing audio of the call being released.
Emergency, what's the emergency?
Yes, there's been a stabbing on Wilkinson Road. There's somebody lying in the street. I think they're dead. Oh, that was awful.
Whereabouts on Ilkeston Road, please?
Outside the old Wilborn building, near the crossroads.
Calocane would then walk towards the city center, calling his brother at 4:47 a.m. "This will be the last time I speak to you. Take the family out the country." Elias asked him, "Are you going to do something stupid?" Valdo replied, "It's already done." At 5:01 a.m., Calocane arrived at Seeleyhurst House, a hostel for vulnerable homeless men, and tried to get into the building. This CCTV footage would later emerge showing a resident punching him in the face and causing him to retreat. As Calocane was trying to smash his way into Seeleyhurst House, Ian Coates, a 65-year-old caretaker at a nearby school, parked his van within a few hundred yards of the hostel. Calocane attacked Ian as he sat in the driver's seat before taking the vehicle from him and driving away in a different direction, leaving Ian laying in the street. Calocane stabbed his 3 victims almost 50 times collectively. By 5:15 a.m., Calocane arrived in the city center, where there were multiple pedestrians on the pavements. He swerved the van into 59-year-old Wayne Burkett, throwing his body into the air before continuing down the street. By 5:29 a.m., Calocane was spotted by police and was tailed, but accelerated away. A minute later, he rammed the van into 40-year-old Marcin Gawronski and 44-year-old Sharon Miller, throwing both to the pavement. Calocane began to drive towards Radford, being tailed by officers to Bentink Road, where he stopped. He was found sitting in the driver's seat with a knife in his hand. Responding officers tased him and he dropped the knife to the footwell of the van. At 5:35 a.m., a little over an hour and a half after his attack had begun, Valdo Calocane was placed under arrest by officers at the scene. He was covered in blood, later found to be a match for Ian Coates, Barnaby Webber, and Grace O'Malley Kumar, and emergency services would discover barbaric scenes as they were alerted to the trail of destruction he had left behind. Controversially, officers would not take toxicology samples from Calocane following his arrest. This is important to note because it meant that it could ultimately not be established whether he was or wasn't sober during the attacks, which would have been an important factor in the conversation of culpability that would go on to dominate the case in the following months. Emergency services found Barnaby, Grace, and Ian lying in the streets of Nottingham in the early hours of the 13th of June, 2023. 19-year-old student Barnaby Webber is remembered by his family as a beautiful, open-hearted young man and a hero with everything in life to look forward to. A talented and passionate cricketer, he was over the moon to have made selection to his university cricket team, and his family described how he loved studying in Nottingham so much that they struggled to get him to come home to Somerset. His brother Charlie would later speak at his funeral, describing beautifully how much he had missed Barnaby when he went away to study, but the pain of grief after his death was incomparable. That seems so stupid now, grieving someone who is still alive, but at that time I was pulled through knowing you were going to come back from uni and I was going to see you again. Now it's the same grief, but I know I'm not going to see you again, at least not here. You can run to the ends of the universe and I'll still be there. I'll still be there, and we'll watch Star Wars together one last time. Charlie also said he was proud that Barnaby had stood his ground in his last moments. You died being the person you always were, my hero. Barnaby's family set up the Barnaby Webber Foundation, which supports young people facing life challenges and also provides cricket clubs with essential equipment in honor of Barnaby's love of the sport. 19-year-old Grace O'Malley Kumar, a medical student who wanted to become a doctor, is remembered by her family as a beautiful person inside and out. As well as being a talented hockey player who represented her country, Grace is remembered for her dedication to medicine, volunteering to vaccinate people when her father was running a COVID vaccination center. At Grace's funeral, which was attended by over 1,000 people, Dr. Sanjoy Kumar, Grace's father, would say the following remembering his daughter. "I look back now and I am astonished by her resolve. Here we have a child who wanted to outdo her father and her uncle in public service. I have to ask, what kind of angelic child tries to outdo others in serving her country and her community? But that is exactly the sort of girl Grace was. She was truly amazing." The Grace O'Malley Kumar Foundation would later be set up by Grace's family and aim to support people in sporting or academic endeavors and help people who are feeling lonely or marginalized, commemorating Grace's caring nature. Grace died a hero, trying to save Barnaby's life even in her final moments. Finally, 65-year-old Ian Coates, a beloved caretaker at a local school who is remembered for always going the extra mile for the benefit of the children there. Following his death, there would be an outpouring of grief from former students for this brilliant, selfless man who had set up a fishing club and took kids out on fishing trips after school using his own money. Ian was due to retire only months after he was murdered, and his friends would describe how they were looking forward to spending more time with him when he had more free time to see them. He would, unfortunately, never get to enjoy his well-earned rest after a lifetime of hard work and service to his community. A vigil was held at the University of Nottingham in honor of Grace and Barnaby on the 14th of June, 2023. Their families attended, and staff and students led a series of tributes. David Weber and Sanjoy Kumar, the fathers of Barnaby and Grace respectively, would also give moving speeches praising the university's support and expressing their pain in the wake of the loss of their children.
I'm lost for words. I've lost my baby boy, and I can't even comprehend how I'm going to deal with it. Myself and Emma and Charlie and all his family and friends. Well, I know Barney would be super touched by everyone that's here, and he loved it. He loved it here. He couldn't wait to come back. Drove me mad, but his heart will be with you guys forever. And thank you so much. Well, I really can't talk much more, so I'm going to pass it over. Thank you.
Everyone here, really want to thank you for your support, for taking the time to be here. All of you guys, everywhere that I see of people. Such a lovely sign of the university and the bond you have. You know, the love that we have out here, I just wish we had it everywhere. So, look after each other. It's the big thing, is that look after your friends and look after people around you. It's so important. I think Grace and her friend, they fell together. And you need to be friends with everyone, and you need to love everyone. And I wish we had more of it.
A second vigil would be held the next day in Nottingham Town Centre and was attended by hundreds of people wanting to pay their respects and show support to the victims' families. The speeches given by the families are all beautiful, and a link to the full stream of the vigil is provided in the description for anybody interested. Ian Coates' family took the stage to give a short but touching speech about how their family has appreciated the outpouring of grief following Ian's death.
We just want to offer our condolences and support to the family of Barnaby. Station we never thought we'd feel, and obviously they're going through the same thing that we are. Anything they need from us, we're happy to support you need. I also want to thank everybody that's given the kind words about my dad, over social media, over the news, in person. It feels like he's touched a lot of hearts over the years, more than what we assumed and knew that he had. So it's been really nice and heartwarming to see the messages and the people come out and talk about how he was when they were younger and how he's helped them. Some beautiful comments. We just wanted to say a quick thing, like we're still dealing with what's happened, we still haven't took it all in. So we just wanted to say a few things. Just like my dad was an avid fisherman, he loved his family, and he also loved his forest. You read?
You read? You read.
Emma Weber, Barnaby's mother, gave an incredible and moving speech commemorating her son and asking people not to turn to hate in their mourning.
So today, we stand here and we feel your love and we're united in grief and shock and disbelief. And one day we will smile again, but it will take time. The monstrous individual who has shattered so many lives will not define us. And I know he will receive the retribution that he deserves. However, this evil person is just that. He is just a person. Please hold no hate that relates to any colour, sex, or religion. My beautiful, beautiful boy, you have mine, your dad and your brother's heart forever. Barney, as Phoebe says, 224. I know silence is the traditional sign to show respect, and we've had that tonight. But as I finish, and you so kindly on this, for you to do one more thing, to show us an enormous round of applause for everyone affected by this tragedy.
The O'Malley Kumar family, Grace's mother Sinead, brother James, and father Sanjoy all shared emotional words about the impact of Grace's loss on their family.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for showing your love for our babies. Be patient with us. We all want to say a little something. But what I want to say is that my beautiful baby girl, she wasn't just beautiful on the outside. You must have seen her pictures across media. She was so beautiful on the inside. She was a treasured and adored child. She wanted very few things in life. She wanted to be a doctor. She wanted to play hockey with her pals. She wanted to have fun, because that's what all students want. They want to enjoy themselves. And all they were doing was walking home. They were just walking home after a night out. And like Emma Weber says, this person must face justice. It just is truly so unfair. But I'll echo what my husband said yesterday. Be kind to each other, look after each other. Don't have hate in your hearts. Say prayers for my baby girl. I can't say any more, but she did love Nottingham.
Grace wasn't only just a sister to me, she was a best friend of mine, my mother, my father, all her friends, and all her family. And if there's only one message that comes out of this, I urge you all to cherish every moment you spend with your loved ones, as you just never know when it will end. Thank you.
We were 4, and we are now 3. And the same for Barney's family. They were 4, and they're now 3. I speak to you as a broken-hearted father. Imagine a world of just love and no violence. Just imagine that world.
The vigils captured the mood in Nottingham and the nation following the attacks. The people attending are shocked and mourning, horrified at the brutality and senselessness of the crimes, but wanting to pull together in support of the victims and their families. And as the legal case began to play out in the public eye, those feelings of shock and mourning would turn to frustration. Valdo Calocane was charged with murder on the 16th of June, but was transferred to a secure hospital after only 5 months in prison. On the 28th of November, he appeared in court to plead guilty to 3 counts of attempted murder and 3 counts of manslaughter on the grounds of diminished responsibility. At a sentencing trial on the 24th of January 2024, victims' families and survivors would get to describe how Calocane's actions had affected them in personal statements. Unfortunately, it seems to be the case in the UK that only the judge's final remarks are filmed during sentencing, so there is no footage of these statements available. The key points are, however, described in the public notes of another hearing in this case, and they are as follows. Emma and David Webber spoke of their rage at the fact their son was stolen from them, their feelings of guilt that they could not protect him, the devastation that Calocane had caused their family, and their determination to ensure that justice was done and he was properly punished. Charlie Webber described how he wanted to set the world on fire when he heard of his brother's killing. Such was his anger and grief. Family friends Tom and Emily Yap described how their lives had been permanently changed by the attack, with Emily describing how fear and anxiety had affected her to the point she couldn't sleep and her relationship with her partner had broken down. Grace's mother, Sinead O'Malley Kumar, described that she could no longer perform her role in the operating theater, knowing how her daughter had been butchered. Sanjoy and James gave statements that day, but also opened up in a moving interview with Sky News around this time, giving us an idea of what they may have said during sentencing as they spoke beautifully about the loss of Grace.
Well, she filled the house with sound and music, and the house is very quiet. The love of our life has been taken away from us. The music from my ears has been taken away. Our landscape has turned from vivid colour to black and white.
Her last moments were in pain. And that's something that really hurts me to think about. And she was a hero. That was her character. She tried her best to save her friend, and that's just simply her character. And ultimately, I think it's very important that people hear that she tried her best to save her friend as a girl. As a 19-year-old girl, she tried her best, and that explains who Grace was. I found myself completely lost since the 13th. I haven't had my best friend to go to. I haven't had an older sister to call. She hasn't been there to pick up the phone to me. And all I can do now to take any comfort in the slightest is I sleep with her university hockey top on my pillow. And I wear her clothes. That's how I try and connect with Grace. I have her earring in now, which I always keep in, because again, it's a part of her. And that's how I try and get as close as I can to her.
Grace's grandfather, uncle, aunts, teacher, and a number of family friends all spoke of their pride in Grace and their inconsolable grief at the loss of someone so loved with so much promise. Ian Coates' son James explained how his father was close to retirement when he was killed and that his partner Elaine could no longer sleep due to anxiety, struggling to eat properly and function day to day. James's sister Susan said life had become a daily battle of emotions and vulnerability. Wayne Burkett, Marcin Gawronski, and Sharon Miller all described how their injuries affected them to this day and that they struggle to sleep, leave the house, and lead normal lives without nightmares and anxiety from the trauma of the attack. These statements give some idea of the lasting impact of the Nottingham attacks and the network of people whose lives were altered by this single event. Medical experts from both the defense and prosecution would, of course, unanimously agree that Calocane was suffering from paranoid schizophrenia at the time of the attacks, and the judge would sentence him to an indefinite hospital order for his crimes.
I am of the opinion that because of all the circumstances of your case, including the nature of the offences to which you pleaded guilty and the history of mental illness, and having considered all the other available ways in which I might deal with you, the most suitable method of dealing with your case is by making an order under Section 37 of the Mental Health Act 1983. I therefore make an order under all 6 counts of the indictment that you will be readmitted to and detained at Ashworth High Security Hospital.
The families of the victims would react to this verdict with statements given outside the courtroom that day.
True justice has not been served today. We as a devastated family have been let down by multiple agency failings and ineffectiveness. The CPS did not consult with us, as has been reported. Instead, we have been rushed, hastened and railroaded. The first meeting we had with them at our behest was Friday the 24th of November, a few short days before the pre-trial plea hearing on the 28th. For the record, they had suggested that we actually meet with them on that very morning, which we clearly thought wasn't enough time. We were presented with a fait accompli. That decision had been made to accept manslaughter charges. We were horrified. At no point during the previous 5.5 months were we given any indication that this could conclude in anything other than murder. We trusted in our system, foolishly as it turns out. We do not dispute that the murderer is mentally unwell and has been for a number of years. However, the premeditated planning, the collection of lethal weapons, hiding in the shadows and the brutality of the attacks are of an individual who knew exactly what he was doing. He knew entirely that it was wrong, but he did it anyway.
The letter of the law was once considered the most important rule to live and abide by, put upon us to make the country a fairer and safer place. Now they're just a cautionary tale, where the calculated, cold, brutal killing spree can be reduced down to something that falls within the same sentencing restrictions and guidelines as that of death by dangerous driving. If this man was not stopped when he was, this could have been one of the most catastrophic attacks this country had ever seen. This man is a killer. Murder was the only thing he cared about, and he fulfilled this in horrific fashion on Tuesday the 13th of June last year. My family has suffered a great loss. The children who my father had a positive impression on have suffered a great loss. The city of Nottingham has suffered a great loss. The fails from the police, the CPS, the health service have resulted in the murder of my father and these 2 innocent students.
Following the sentencing, family members would appear on television and radio shows to express their disappointment at the verdict, even meeting Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer in January 2024 to call for a full public inquiry into the failings of the case. In September, the Prime Minister reaffirmed his commitment to hold an inquiry into the Nottingham attacks. In February, more failings were exposed as the families learned of incidents of police misconduct around the attack. One example was a message sent by responding police officers at the scene. The message reads, "So, 2 students on Ilkeston Road have been proper butchered. 4 officers turned up and tried to hold their inners in. Suspects then made off and attacked a man in a car on Magdala and stabbed him to death." Emma wrote an open letter to the officers involved after her requests to meet them were rejected. The following is an extract from her letter. "The callous, degrading, and desensitized manner of your comments have caused more trauma than you can imagine. Anyone who can witness the details of such a horror as happened and refer to lost children as butchered animals should seriously consider their position. So, to the author of that message, who we understand has received a management warning, I pray you will read this and pause for a while. Dig a little deeper for compassion and care. Show the respect in the future that you did not afford Barney." It was revealed that police officers had been dismissed for forwarding this message to people outside the police force, looking up records relating to Calocane without being involved in the investigation, and viewing body camera footage of Barnaby and Grace's final moments. In fact, it was identified that almost 180 staff viewed material relating to the case, with 11 having no legitimate reason to do so. On the 8th of May, the Attorney General would appeal Calocane's sentence on the basis that it was unduly lenient.
His culpability was not extinguished by his mental impairment, but only reduced or diminished. He knew what he was doing. He acted deliberately and with the intent to kill.
6 days later, the Court of Appeal would rule that the sentence was not unduly lenient, in a bitter blow to the survivors and families of the victims. They reacted to this in statements following the ruling.
We're disappointed, but not entirely surprised. Until the law changes in this country, the diminished responsibility charge and plea means that murderers can get away with murder.
On the anniversary of the Nottingham attacks, the families of the victims would walk down Ilkeston Road, and ceremonies were held at Huntingdon Academy and the university, showing that Nottingham was still reeling from the attacks a year later. Family members would speak at the university ceremony, promising to hold accountable those who had failed their loved ones.
On the day of the Nottingham attacks, she chose friendship over fear. She fought, and she fought valiantly. She was a hero. The cowards were Valdo Calocane and all of the people who failed our children. What we have found out since the attacks makes uncomfortable reading. A catalogue of failures, a series of letdowns by the authorities who simply didn't do their jobs. But today is about memorial.
2 months later, on the 13th of August, 2024, the Care Quality Commission released a damning report on the failings in the treatment of Valdo Calocane, including details of 8 risk assessments between May 2020 and February 2022, which all omitted or minimized key details of his case, such as refusing medicine, ongoing psychosis, and the escalating levels of violence towards others in the later stages of his care. Many of the findings in the CQC report were used to inform the first section of this video, including Calocane's incorrect admission to the hospital, missed opportunity for medication change, and the fact that nobody was consulted when he was discharged 9 months before the attacks. The families reacted in disgust to these findings. Sanjoy and Sinead appeared on Sky News to say that the errors in Calocane's care were not technical, but basic.
We had a simple case of a culpable person who just did not take his medication. All of this is devastating to read. It was so basic. The errors were not technical. They were basic errors and repeated 4 times over. There were so many chances to change the course of Calocane, but none of those opportunities were taken by any of the doctors.
Emma Webber appeared on LBC to speak on the family's fight for justice, saying that she still doesn't accept manslaughter and, in an emotional moment, how she won't stop fighting for Barnaby until she feels she's done all she can.
I do not and will never accept that he should have been, CPS, sorry, waffling,
That's
shouldn't
right.
have accepted manslaughter. He's a murderer. He's mentally unwell, very mentally unwell, but he is a murderer and he does deserve and should have some penal element. I think
it's your belief he went out that night, tragically, he was going to murder someone, and
he
it
had
was
foresight,
your
he
son
had
and
planning.
Grace.
He had a rucksack full of weapons. He'd been stockpiling them for months. He planned his route. He planned his victims. He hid in the shadows and waited for my son and for Grace. And then he so brutally and violently attacked them. After he had finished Grace, he went back to make sure that Barney was dead. I have to grieve. I have to look after myself. I have to look after Charlie and Dave.
Of course.
And everyone else around me. But for Barnaby, I won't stop until I can say, I can put my head down on the pillow and say, I did all that I could.
The case of the 2023 Nottingham attacks raises many questions. It sparked national conversation in the UK around public safety and the adequacy of mental health services. The inquiry called for by the victims' families is ongoing, but if the CQC report is any indication of the information it will bring to light, these conversations can only become more important and more upsetting. Although the tragedy of this story is, of course, the horrific events of the 13th of June 2023, it is also found in the systemic failings that facilitated these events by missing opportunities to arrest Calocane, detain him long enough in the hospital, or adequately treat his condition. There is no question of Calocane's diagnosis. It is indisputable that he was suffering from paranoid schizophrenia when he perpetrated the Nottingham attacks. The unfortunate truth is that throughout this case, he was never properly handled until after the damage was done. He wasn't admitted to the hospital at all until after he'd caused a woman to fracture her spine. He never spent longer than 2 months in the hospital until after the attacks, and he was never arrested in connection with assaults in September of 2021 or May of 2023. The responsibility for Calocane's actions is his and his alone, but the failings in this case are shared by law enforcement, mental health services, and a justice system that is not equipped to adequately punish a mentally ill killer like Calocane. This case shows us how a cascade of missed opportunities can culminate in the most horrible way imaginable. For everyone affected by this case, hopefully you're able to find some comfort from the ongoing actions of the victims' families, who have been incredible in their strength and tireless advocacy for change. Families who were failed at every stage of this case but refused to give up their fight for justice in the name of the ones they lost. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe to the channel for more true crime documentaries.